That was wild, almost like a twisted prophecy come true. Suge Knight, the man behind Death Row Records, just got viciously stabbed in prison. And insiders are whispering it wasn't random. It was a warning. Folks are saying he was getting too bold, exposing secrets that certain powerful people didn't want out. So who was he threatening to expose, and who made sure he stayed silent? Let's break it down. This wasn't just any prison fight. This was a hit that shook hip-hop to its core. Suge Knight, one of the most feared names in the game, was suddenly reduced to just another number behind bars. It went down in June, and it was quick and brutal. Sources say the lights were already off in C Block when, out of nowhere, an inmate got access to Suge's cell, and all hell broke loose. But to really get why this happened, you gotta understand who Suge Knight really was. Not just to hip-hop, but to the dark underbelly of the whole entertainment world. This wasn't some random street dude who lucked into fame. Suge was the one they feared, the boogeyman of the music industry. Even the A-listers kept their distance. He came up in Compton, started as a football player, but he wasn't built for just touchdowns. He pivoted to the streets, running muscle jobs across LA. But the early 90s? That's when everything changed. After Dr. Dre ditched Eazy-E and Ruthless Records, he and Suge built Death Row from the ground up, and the game was never the same after that. What started off as a scrappy little label blew up into the epicenter of West Coast rap, and Suge didn't get there by playing nice. Death Row wasn't just a record label, it was a kingdom, and Suge Knight ran it like a boss on a throne. By 1994, Death Row was raking in over $100 million a year. The charts were dominated by their roster: Tupac, Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, Nate Dogg, Thaw Dogg Pound, basically the Avengers of West Coast hip-hop. But behind all that glory, pure chaos. Insiders said Suge didn't lead with contracts. He led with fear. Word was, if you crossed him, you were gonna feel it. There were nonstop whispers about threats, brawls, and straight-up intimidation.
I'm sure somebody taught him that, and that's more deep in the industry. You guys who got involved with a lot of people who was their mentors, instead of having a guy to mentor your own father, they was having these guys they mentored. And when that happens in the industry, it was done to them, they do to the next person.
One of the craziest stories, people claim Suge once held Vanilla Ice over a hotel balcony in a fight over royalties. He was infamous for rolling up to clubs deep, 15, sometimes 20 guys strong, shutting down whatever spot he stepped in. And if anyone dared to act slick, Suge would make an example out of them, on the spot. But by the mid-2000s, the empire crumbled. Death Row was bankrupt. Suge was buried in legal drama. Assault charges, lawsuits, parole violations, you name it. Then came the moment that changed everything. In 2015, during the filming of Straight Outta Compton, Suge ran over 2 men with his truck, killing one. That landed him 28 years in Donovan Correctional Facility. Most people thought that'd be the end of the Death Row King, but they were dead wrong. Even locked up, Suge wasn't done. In January 2024, he picked up that prison payphone and made one collect call that shook the hip-hop world to its core: the stage, the PBD podcast. And while most inmates doing hard time keep their heads down, avoiding cameras and staying quiet, Suge Knight did the exact opposite. He knew the game better than anyone. In hip-hop, staying silent can get you erased. So Suge picked up that prison phone, and for nearly 2 explosive hours, he let loose with raw, unfiltered, and dangerous claims that had the whole industry on edge. This wasn't just some wild rant. Suge came with names, stories, and receipts. He didn't tiptoe around anything. It started off chill, just Suge reflecting on the early days of Death Row. But when the convo shifted to the Diddy drama, that's when the first bombshell dropped. They didn't become like that on their own, Suge said. According to Suge, Diddy was trained, taught by powerful figures in the industry, men who groomed him into who he is now. And today, Suge claims Diddy's just repeating the cycle, playing the same role that once controlled him. Then, boom. Suge turned the heat up again, this time calling out one of the most untouchable names in music, Clive Davis. If you know anything about the business, you know Clive's name isn't thrown around lightly. He's the kind of exec who's built legends, buried secrets, and according to Suge, he's the one who decides who gets crowned and who gets cut off. And if you thought Suga was done after that, not even close. Less than an hour later, he went even harder, claiming the top dogs in hip-hop are all in on a silent game. Either follow the rules or get silenced. And Suge dropped a final warning. Even Diddy might be in danger now, not for what he's done, but for what he knows. He was in danger, and he knew it. This wasn't just some washed-up OG talking slick for clout. Suge Knight knew the dirt, because he helped bury it. He was calling out Diddy, but what Sugi didn't seem to realize was talking too loud in this game. That's how you get silenced. And that's exactly what went down. It was just past 10:40 p.m. at R.J. Donovan Correctional Facility, Unit 5, C Block, medium security tucked outside San Diego. On the surface, it looked like any regular night. The yard was locked, lights dimmed, guards doing rounds, doors sealing one by one. But something wasn't right.
Clive Davis, you got to understand one thing. If Death Row, when I started Death Row, you got to remember one thing. I didn't have no co-climbing, nobody else. So I started that company on my own and grabbed.
According to a leaked statement from a corrections officer, quoted by Hip Hop Unfiltered, one cell door stayed open way longer than it ever should have. That cell? It belonged to inmate D 3095, Marion Suge Knight. That door was only supposed to be open 30 seconds tops, but it hung open for 2.5 minutes. In prison time, that's an eternity. No way that was an accident. During that window, a masked figure, face covered, gloves on, slid into Suga's cell. And what happened next? Chilling. Witnesses in nearby cells told Vlad TV. We heard a thud, then another. You knew someone got hit hard. No yelling. Just that deep gasping sound, like when ribs get crushed. One inmate said the prison phone, Suge's only lifeline, got cut off for maintenance minutes after the attack. And just like that, silence. The attacker vanished back into the shadows. Gone. And the security cameras? Supposedly on, but between 10:38 p.m. and 10:46 p.m., they showed nothing but static. One correctional staffer later told Hip Hop DX they didn't want to go public. It would have messed up everything. Bad for the prison, bad for the feds, just bad. And just like that, the king of death row was left bleeding in his cell. Ribs cracked, face slashed, blood on the concrete. The system moved fast. Within the hour, Suge was rushed to the medical unit. 3 inmates with known ties to death row were either shipped out or thrown straight into solitary. The C Block logs for that night? Wiped clean. 2 outgoing calls were recorded, then manually deleted before sunrise. One insider told Vlad TV, somebody big pulled rank.
Black to hold the bag. Because you gotta realize one thing. That boy life is dangerous. His life isn't. He's just not dangerous with the shit they said he was doing, but he's in danger.
That's why none of this ever made the news. They had 2 teams ready, one to do the hit, one to clean up the mess. But the streets? They knew by morning. Word shot through the California prison yards, from Pelican Bay to Lancaster. The big homie got touched. Everything was about to shift. Now, everyone knows Suge made enemies on his way up. But what most people don't realize is just how deep those grudges run, and who's still holding on to them. Names like Diddy, Clive Davis, Jimmy Iovine, even old-school death row enforcers turned government informants. Every one of them had a reason to be nervous, especially after that PBD podcast call. Because Suge wasn't just venting, he was warning. He was ready to expose the real web, how the music industry's been dancing with criminal crews, federal plugs, and dirty money for decades. And according to one longtime West Coast insider who spoke off the record to Hip Hop, he wasn't bluffing. Sure, Suge Knight hasn't been musically relevant in years, but when it comes to secrets, he's still holding ammo. We're talking murder cases, shady contracts, and dirty money moves going all the way back to the days of Pac and Big. And now, he's way too reckless to keep any of it under wraps. After that broadcast, it was clear someone had to shut him up. Hours after the attack, everything inside Donovan started shifting. Gang politics flipped. Blood sets that had always backed death row went quiet. A top-level Crip shot caller got transferred overnight with zero explanation. By the end of the week, Suge Knight's name was basically erased from Yard Talk. A silent rule took over. One inmate put it like this: "When the boss moves in silence, you don't speak on it." This was one of them moves.
You speak on Snoop. People can say, well, are you picking on Snoop? Absolutely not. Snoop is picking on Snoop. Everybody say, Snoop, you had involvement in it. We're not trying to put you in prison. I don't want you to go to prison. Can't nobody put you in prison. You connected to those folks. And you Trump's little bitch. But why you just don't set the...
Now you could say this was just prison politics, maybe old street drama finally catching up. But when you line it all up, the phone call, the stabbing, the media blackout, the sudden transfers, the message becomes loud and clear. This wasn't some random attack. Suge poked too many powerful people, and they responded. Because here's the real kicker. That podcast? It wasn't a one-time rant. Suge had been running his mouth for months, dropping names, exposing major players, threatening to blow the lid off the whole industry. From his prison cell, Suge Knight has been on a mission, calling out the biggest frauds in hip-hop, one story at a time. And now, the whole rap game's watching their backs, because Suge's got nothing left to lose, and way too much to say. Collect Call with Suge Knight launched in October 2023, and from day one, he's been going scorched earth. This OG has been peeling back the layers on hip-hop's biggest legends, exposing what he says are the real stories behind the fame. Lies, betrayal, and straight-up snake moves. Suge claims it all leads straight to the top of the industry. Some of his wildest claims aimed right at his old death row fam, especially Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. Two dudes Suge says he took from the block and turned into global powerhouses. But according to him, all that fame came with a price: loyalty, truth, and the destruction of everything Suge built from scratch. But no beef cuts deeper, or gets more dangerous, than his war with Snoop Dogg. This ain't about contracts or clout. This is personal. Suge's talking betrayal, snitch talk, and street codes getting broken. The kind of stuff that, if true, could rewrite major chapters of hip-hop history. And when Suge talks about Snoop, you can feel the heat in his voice. It's not just frustration, it's deep. He's not just accusing Snoop of lying about the past. He's flat out suggesting that Snoop's been protected, that he's working with certain people tied to law enforcement. And that connection? It's how Snoop dodged the kind of heat that destroyed others from their circle. In street terms, that kind of accusation hits hard.
It's the weirdest bitch I ever met in my life. Naturally, I'm in jail. Naturally, I'm in prison. So when the corporation of the name Death Row, they didn't pay the fees to keep it going, you went and got the name and asked your boss.
It raises the question, did Snoop stay free by turning his back on the crew? The betrayal Suge feels comes out heavy when he talks about how Snoop and others rewrote death row history, downplaying Suge's role while propping up their own. And Dr. Dre? That story's just as messy. Suge says what once was a creative partnership that birthed some of the most iconic tracks ever turned into something way darker, more personal, and way more painful. Suge's latest claims paint Dr. Dre in a way the world's never seen, struggling with personal identity, facing private battles, and at one point even turning to Suge for support during deep emotional crises. But now, Suge's airing it all out. Whether it's pure revenge or a calculated strike on Dre's legacy, one thing's clear. This goes way beyond any regular business beef. This is personal. In Suge's version of events, Eazy-E got played hard. He says Dr. Dre was pretending to keep it cool with Eazy, while secretly plotting his downfall. And the way Suge tells it, that betrayal crushed Eazy emotionally. He says Eazy trusted Dre, never realizing he was being set up from the inside. But the darkest twist? Suge claims Dre wasn't just trying to sabotage Eazy's career, he was allegedly planning violence. According to Knight, Dre had even lined up a hit on Eazy-E, and he claims there's photographic evidence to back it up. If there's any truth to this, it completely changes how we see the inner circle of NWA and adds a whole new layer of suspicion around Eazy-E's tragic death from AIDS-related complications. To Suge, today's hip-hop scene is just a shell of what it used to be. He sees it as a world now run by corrupt systems, fake alliances, and media gatekeepers, far from the raw street truth he says he helped bring to the top. And the drama doesn't stop with the big names. Suge's still clashing with people like Whack 100 and Reggie Wright Jr., ex-Death Row affiliates, who he claims twisted the truth and downplayed his role in building the empire. Those beefs keep popping off on social media, proving that Suge's list of enemies is long and still growing. The impact of Suge Knight's accusations goes way beyond personal drama. If even half of what he's saying is real, it means some of hip-hop's most celebrated legends built their empires on lies. We're talking betrayals, deals in the dark, and straight-up moves that clash hard with the image they sold to the world.
The guard calls up. He says, Eazy appeared for Dre. Let him up. And Eazy at the guard. You know what's up there? He said, that's Dre. So he walks in the studio. You see me, you see a few people. We start talking. I said, man, he ain't coming, but I'm going to talk to you about it. I showed him the pictures of all the artists I had on one piece and the 3 I had on another piece.
For fans and real ones who follow the culture, Suge's podcast is either a raw reckoning long overdue or a bitter campaign by a man whose era is long gone. But no matter how people see it, from Dre to Diddy, Clive Davis to Snoop, Suge's been naming names fearlessly. Still, there's one story that makes the streets go quiet. One topic that even Suge knows could get him touched if he talks too loud. And it ain't about money or contracts. It's about that night in Vegas, the night Tupac got hit. Tupac was in Suge Knight's car when the shots rang out, and Suge's never been able to shake the shadows that followed. Of all the drama tied to Suge, beef, betrayals, street wars, nothing carries more heat than the questions around Pac's death. The official story's legendary by now. Tupac and Suge had just left a Tyson fight at the MGM Grand. Moments later, a car pulled up, shots flew, and Pac got hit multiple times. He died 6 days later. Suge walked away with light injuries, but his own words about that night? All over the place. In interviews, calls, and even courtrooms, Suge's stories have shifted, raised eyebrows, and sparked decades of theories. Some say the feds want answers. Others think the streets do. And if you pay close attention when Suge talks about that night, you'll hear it. His tone changes. He gets defensive. And that alone says more than words ever could. This right here shows just how sensitive the topic really is, and how aware Suge is that a lot of people think he played a role in the murder of one of hip-hop's greatest legends. His challenge to those critics? How do you even know the details if you weren't there? That kind of statement sounds like frustration, but also feels like a slick way to dodge something deeper, maybe even truths he ain't ready to face.
One of the saddest things I ever seen in a man. I'm looking at Eazy, Eric, like, he said, I bought it car, I did all this for him, it wasn't for me, he didn't be nothing. And it's like he trying to hold back the tears because he don't want to be embarrassed by me seeing him crying. Because he crying because he's scared or he crying because he hurt.
The relationship between Suge and Tupac wasn't simple. On one side, Suge got Pac out of prison, gave him a platform that helped create some of his most iconic music. But on the other side, that bond was built on survival, pressure, and mutual need. And that kind of relationship, it can turn deadly fast. There's no doubt Suge feels protective over Tupac's legacy. You can hear it in his voice when he goes off on folks claiming to know the real story without ever even meeting Pac. But the problem is, Suge was there the night it all went down. That same night, hours before the shooting, Suge and Tupac were caught on security cameras, beating down Orlando Anderson, a suspected Crip, in the MGM Grand Lobby. That confrontation is widely believed to be the spark that lit the fuse. But here's where it gets murky and dangerous. More evidence and insider testimony keeps surfacing, and it points to something way bigger than a street beef. It suggests the hit on Tupac wasn't just revenge. It may have been planned by people inside Suge's own camp. And that possibility, it puts Suge in a very tight spot. Because if it's true, the streets and the feds aren't just looking at the shooters. They're watching the ones who gave the green light. Former LAPD detective Greg Cadding's investigation adds a heavy layer to the case against Suge Knight, one that dives deep into money, control, and power games inside Death Row Records. One of the most damaging parts? The insurance angle. If Suge was strapped for cash and Tupac was becoming harder to manage, Pac's death would have checked too many boxes, cutting losses and triggering a massive payout at the same time. That theory hits harder when you look at Suge's current financial mess. In March 2025, he tried and failed to overturn his 28-year prison sentence. Judges shut it down. And with lawsuits and debts still piling up, the narrative that money has always been a motivator for Suge just keeps getting stronger. But the most dangerous hit to his credibility? It comes from inside his own house. Keefe D., a key witness in the Tupac case, gave up detailed accounts that put Suge in a very bad light. His stories pull back the curtain on the chaos inside Death Row and paint Suge as a man running on ego, intimidation, and fear. According to Keefe D., Suge wasn't the invincible boss he made himself out to be. He lost fights, got checked, and showed real vulnerability behind the scenes. That's a huge crack in the image Suge spent years building. But more than that, Keefe D's inside knowledge of Suge's movements and ties make his statements about the Tupac hit way too credible. And that's what makes it dangerous. Every new revelation over the years seems to chip away at Suge's defense. From his money troubles, to his role that night in Vegas, to the fact that he walked away from that shooting while Tupac didn't, it all adds up. No direct proof yet. But the pattern? It keeps pointing back to him. Suge Knight's go-to move when faced with accusations? Attack the messenger. He's stuck to his story, denying involvement while throwing shots at those pointing fingers. One of the most chilling claims? Suge hinted that Snoop Dogg might know more about Tupac's death than he's ever let on. He's even accused Snoop of leaving security behind during critical moments, painting a pattern of betrayal that, according to Suge, could mirror how Pac was left hanging in his final hours. And then there's the Biggie Smalls connection, a whole other piece of this dark puzzle.
Anything can happen, anything go wrong. And the tragedy is always there. You're not out of prison.
Some believe Pac's murder and Biggie's were connected, and that Suge had a hand in both. Revenge was the rumored motive. Suge's never been charged, but if he was tied to both killings, that would mark one of the most devastating and cold-blooded chapters in music history. When asked about Biggie's murder, Suge's reaction wasn't loud, it was heavy. He didn't confirm, didn't deny, just said he might know who did it, but didn't want to speculate. That's either real ignorance or a calculated move to avoid dropping names that could pull himself into the fire. Now, with both cases still under investigation and new witnesses popping up, the heat around Suge is far from cooling off. Forensic tech is way more advanced now, and law enforcement's still chasing leads that couldn't be locked down back in the 90s. Suge's 28-year sentence puts him in a dangerous spot. He's got little to lose and everything to bargain with. If he starts talking, it could shake the whole industry. But that's exactly why he's also a target. Anybody who fears what Suge might expose has a reason to keep him quiet. One deal, one word, one name, and the game changes forever. The real danger right now? It's not just what Suge Knight knows about Tupac's death. It's what he might be willing to reveal. If he had a direct hand in it, speaking up could finally give Tupac's family and fans the closure they've been chasing for decades. But it would also open the door to fresh criminal charges. And if it wasn't murder, but negligence or a bad call that led to Pac getting hit, admitting that would still destroy what's left of Suge's legacy, with zero legal payoff. So now the question isn't just, what does Suge know? It's, how much longer can he stay alive to say it? Because in an industry where empires got built on silence and people got dropped just for asking the wrong questions, Suge's voice is still echoing from behind the walls. Every phone call, every podcast, every name he says out loud, it's a warning shot. The game ain't clean, and whether Suge's spilling truth, bending facts, or playing a high-stakes survival move, one thing is crystal clear. Suge Knight still has the power to shake the industry from the inside. And that same power? It might just be the reason somebody tries to silence him for good. If you were locked in on this wild ride, don't forget to like, subscribe, drop a comment, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And hit that bell so you don't miss the next one. 'Cause this story, it ain't over yet. See you next time.